The words hit like daggers as I cleared out my desk. You're throwing away everything we built for you, Lucia. This food truck fantasy will be your biggest failure yet. My brother Gregory's voice dripped with the same condescension he'd perfected since childhood. I'm Lucia, and at 28, I just quit my 6-figure tech job to start a Lebanese food truck. Crazy, right? That's what my family thinks anyway. Actually, Greg, I'm throwing away everything you wanted for me, I said, dropping my company laptop into its box with a satisfying thunk. There's a difference. He leaned against my now empty cubicle, arms crossed over his expensive suit. Mum's crying, you know. Dad can barely look at the family photos anymore. Drama queen much? I rolled my eyes, but my hands trembled as I packed away my last family photo, the one with Tita, my grandmother, teaching me how to roll grape leaves in her kitchen, the only one who'd understand what I'm doing now. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. Please reconsider. We didn't send you to Stanford for this. I switched it to silent as my friend Kendall appeared at my desk, grinning. Ready to ditch this corporate prison, boss? More than ready, I said, hoisting the box. The food truck's being delivered tomorrow. Gregory scoffed. A food truck, in Silicon Valley, where rent costs more than your yearly profit will ever be. Watch me, I said, turning to face him. One day, you'll be standing in line at Zesty Za'atar, waiting for my Za'atar Manakish like everyone else. Zesty what? He laughed. You can't even name a business properly. Kendall stepped between us. Come on, Lucia. Your new business partner is freezing out here. As we walked toward the elevator, Gregory called out, When this fails, and it will fail, don't come crying to us. Outside, the crisp January air hit my face. Kendall squeezed my shoulder. You okay? I should be terrified, I said, looking up at the gleaming tech campus I was leaving behind. But I'm not. I'm excited. Your grandmother would be proud, Kendall said, helping me load the box into her car. You think? I pulled out my phone, showing her the photo I'd saved as my wallpaper, Tita's handwritten recipe for shish tawuk. She always said our family lost its soul when we stopped cooking together. Speaking of cooking, Kendall said, we need to test that marinade recipe tonight. The health inspection's at 9 tomorrow. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister Layla. Are you really doing this? Greg says you've lost your mind. They'll see, I said, putting the phone away. They'll all see. We drove to my apartment, where the smell of garlic and herbs greeted us. I'd been testing recipes all week, much to my roommate's delight. The kitchen counter was covered with containers of spices Tita had left me, za'atar, sumac, baharat, each one a piece of the heritage my family seemed eager to forget. Taste this, I said, offering Kendall a spoonful of toom. Too much garlic? Perfect amount of garlic, she said, reaching for water. Your brother's an idiot if he thinks this won't sell. I stirred the marinade, remembering Teta's hands guiding mine, teaching me the exact moment to add each spice. You know what the worst part is? They act like I'm throwing away my education, like my business degree won't help me run this truck. Their loss, Kendall said, sampling the chicken. Holy shit, Lucia, this is incredible. My phone rang. Mom again. This time I answered. Lucia, Habibi, please, it's not too late to fix this. I know Richard in HR would take you back. Mom, stop. This isn't a mistake that needs fixing. This is my choice. But your future... My future is exactly what I'm building, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Tita's recipes deserve better than being lost in some family cookbook nobody opens. Your grandmother didn't spend her life cooking so you could throw away. No, I cut her off. She spent her life cooking to keep our culture alive, to give us something to be proud of. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. After hanging up, I showed Kendall the business plan I'd spent months perfecting. Market analysis, cost projections, social media strategy, everything they thought I was too naive to consider. Tomorrow, I said, we prove them all wrong. Kendall raised her water glass. To Zesty Za'atar. To Tita, I added softly, touching my necklace, the last gift she gave me, a small gold pendant shaped like a cedar tree. In my mind, I could hear her voice. Habibi, our food tells our story. Never let anyone shame you for sharing it. Looking at the marinating chicken, the scattered spices, and my best friend's encouraging smile, I felt something settle in my chest. This wasn't just about proving my family wrong anymore. This was about proving myself right. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. Order up, 2 chicken shawarma wraps and a side of fattoush, I called out, wiping sweat from my forehead. 3 weeks in, and Zesty Zatar was starting to build a rhythm. Make that 3 shawarma wraps, Kendall shouted over the lunch rush noise. The tech bros are multiplying. The line stretched around the corner of the food truck lot, a mix of curious foodies and regular customers who'd found us through our Instagram page. The February sun beat down on the chrome exterior of our truck, making the small space feel like a sauna. Did you see the comments on our latest post? Kendall asked, expertly wrapping a shawarma. That video of you making manakish hit 10,000 views. Less social media, more garnishing, I laughed, but my heart swelled with pride. Each positive comment felt like a tiny victory against Gregory's predictions of failure. A familiar face appeared at the window. Marin, another food truck owner who'd become a fast friend. Girl, your line is longer than mine today. What's your secret? Generations of Lebanese grandmothers, I winked, handing her our specialty, za'atar manakish with extra olive oil, just how Teta made it. Speaking of family, Morin said between bites, your sister's been lurking on our Instagram. She's liked every post this week. My hands froze over the cutting board. Layla? Are you sure? Unless there's another Layla Lewis, 22, who looks exactly like your sister. Before I could process this, an elderly man approached the window. His eyes crinkled as he scanned our menu. Smells just like my mother's kitchen, he said, his accent thick with memories of home. Where was home? I asked, already reaching for the tome. Beirut, he smiled. Left in 75. Haven't had proper shawarma since. Then you're in luck, I said, preparing his order with extra care. This is my grandmother's recipe. She was from Beirut, too. When he took his first bite, his eyes welled up. Exactly like Mama's, he whispered. You've brought a piece of home to California, Habibti. The moment was interrupted by my phone buzzing. Mom, again. I let it go to voicemail. Your mother still not speaking to you? Kendall asked as we cleaned up during the afternoon lull. Oh, she's speaking, just not the words I want to hear. I played the latest voicemail on speaker. Lucia, your father's friend saw your food cart. Is this really how you want people to see our family? Like common street vendors? Kendall threw a piece of pita at my phone. Common street vendors who just made more in 3 weeks than their fancy son did in bonuses last quarter. She was right. Despite the startup costs, we were already turning a profit. Our social media following grew daily, and we'd been invited to cater several tech company lunches. Even the local food blog had featured us in their must-try food trucks list. Speaking of money, I said, pulling out my laptop. Check this out. I showed Kendall our books. If we keep this up, we can start looking at a second truck by summer. No way. She hugged me, nearly knocking over a container of tahini. We're actually doing it. The afternoon rush started picking up when I spotted a familiar face in line. My sister Layla, trying to look inconspicuous in large sunglasses. What should I get? She asked quietly when she reached the window, like she was afraid someone might recognize her. Depends, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Are you here to spy for Greg? Or did you actually want to try the food? She pulled off her sunglasses, looking guilty. Both? Greg's been insufferable since you left. Keeps saying you'll come crawling back any day now. And what do you think? She glanced at the line behind her, then at our pristine truck with its professional branding. I think it smells amazing in here, like Tita's kitchen during Eid. Something in my chest loosened slightly. Try the shawarma platter, I said. Extra toom, just how you liked it as a kid. When I handed her the food, she hesitated. Lou, I'm sorry about before. About not standing up for you when you quit. Prove it, I said. Tell Greg exactly how good this food is. She took a bite and closed her eyes. Oh my God, this is better than tetas. Don't tell Mom I said that. After she left, Kendall nudged me. Think she'll really tell Greg? Doesn't matter, I said, watching my sister disappear into the crowd, already taking photos of her food. The line speaks for itself. By closing time, we'd served over 200 customers and received 3 catering inquiries. As we cleaned up, I touched Teta's cedar pendant and smiled. Common street vendor, huh? I muttered. Just wait, Mama, just wait. You're late, Mum said as I walked into their house for our monthly family dinner. The familiar smell of her cooking filled the air, but something was off. She'd made Italian, not Lebanese. Food truck ran long, I said, kissing her cheek. Big corporate catering order. At least you're making money as a street vendor, Gregory called from the living room, not bothering to look up from his phone. Though probably not enough for a decent watch. I checked my sauce-stained t-shirt and shrugged. Actually, we're doing great, but you'd know that if you followed our Instagram. We hit 20,000 followers yesterday. Instagram followers don't pay bills, Dad said, emerging from his study. Richard still asks about you, you know. Says your position is open. My position is running my own successful business, I said, following them to the dining room. But thanks for the concern. Layla was already seated, looking uncomfortable. Since her visit to the truck last week, she'd been texting me regularly, asking for recipes and business advice. Now, she wouldn't meet my eyes. So, Mom said, serving the pasta, Gregory has some exciting news. My brother straightened his tie, grinning. I've been promoted to senior financial analyst, the youngest in the firm's history. Mabrook, Dad beamed, this calls for champagne. As he went to fetch the bottle, Gregory smirked at me. Some of us are still climbing the corporate ladder instead of climbing into food trucks. Funny, I said, twirling pasta on my fork. I catered lunch for your firm last week. Your colleague Marcus loved our food so much, he booked us for his wedding. You're catering weddings now? Layla perked up. Don't encourage her, Mom snapped. It's bad enough she's throwing away her education. Now she wants to be a wedding caterer too. What's wrong with catering weddings? I put down my fork. Tita catered weddings. Or did you forget that's how she put you through college? The table fell silent. Mum's face tightened. That was different. We had no choice back then. No, you're right. I had a choice. And I chose to honor her legacy instead of being ashamed of it. We're not ashamed, Dad said, returning with the champagne. We're concerned. This experiment of yours. Experiment, I laughed. We're making 5 figures a month. How's that for an experiment? Gregory choked on his wine. You're lying. I pulled out my phone, showing him our books. Check the numbers yourself, Mr. Senior Financial Analyst. Or better yet, ask your colleague Marcus why he chose us over that fancy catering company you recommended. That's actually impressive, Layla said quietly. Layla, Mom warned. No, Mom, it is impressive. Have you even tried her food? It's better than... Than what? I challenged. Better than Tita's. Better than the food you pretend doesn't exist when your country club friends come over. That's enough. Dad slammed his hand on the table. We're here to celebrate Gregory's success, not your street food venture. Just then, my phone buzzed. An email from the Bay Area Food Festival. I opened it, my hands shaking. Oh my God, I whispered. What now? Gregory rolled his eyes. Health department finally shut you down. No, I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I just got invited to be a featured vendor at the Bay Area Food Festival. The waiting list is usually 3 years long. The one they do at the waterfront. Layla's eyes widened. Lou, that's huge. Mom snatched my phone, reading the email. Her face paled. This is a mistake. They must not know. Know what, Mom? That I'm not some fancy restaurant, that I'm just a street vendor, or that I'm your daughter, embarrassing you by cooking the food you grew up eating. Lucia, Dad started. No, I want to know. What exactly are you ashamed of? The fact that I'm successful, or the fact that I'm successful doing something you look down on? Gregory scoffed. Success is relative. One good month doesn't... 6 good months, I corrected him. 6 months of proving you all wrong. 6 months of watching people line up for hours to taste the food you think is beneath you. 6 months of carrying on Teta's legacy while you all try to forget it. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Layla called after me. Lou, wait. You know where to find me, I said over my shoulder. Just look for the line of people who aren't ashamed to eat our food. As I reached my car, another email came through. This one from a local news station, wanting to feature zesty za'atar in their Hidden Gems segment. I touched Tita's pendant and smiled through my tears. Watch me now, I whispered, starting the engine. Just watch me now. Behind me, through the dining room window, I could see my family still seated at the table, their celebratory dinner forgotten. Layla was standing, gesturing at something on her phone, probably our Instagram page. For the first time since I'd started this journey, their opinions didn't matter. I had a food festival to prepare for. A charity event? Kendall raised her eyebrows as we prepped for the morning rush. On top of the food festival prep, hear me out, I said, chopping parsley for tabbouleh. Remember Maria, the single mom who comes by every Tuesday? She gave me this idea. Marin, perched on our prep counter, nodded enthusiastically. The one with the twins, she's always sharing our posts in her single mom support group. Exactly. These women are working multiple jobs, raising kids alone, and still trying to put healthy food on the table. I wiped my hands on my apron. We could do a special event. All proceeds go to their support network. Plus, Kendall grinned, it'll drive Gregory absolutely insane to see you succeeding and being charitable while he's just succeeding. This isn't about Gregory, I protested, but couldn't hide my smile. Okay, maybe it's a little about Gregory. My phone buzzed. A text from Layla. Need to talk. Coming by the truck today. Don't tell Mom. Speaking of family drama, I showed them the message. Your sister's been commenting on every post lately, Marin observed. Even defended us against some troll last week. Before I could respond, a familiar voice called through the service window. Is this a private meeting or can anyone join? I spun around to find Amanda, my former colleague from the tech company, grinning at me. Amanda, what are you doing here? Besides craving your shawarma, I'm here about the food festival. She pulled out a business card. I'm on the organizing committee this year. My heart skipped. You're the one who recommended us? After tasting your food at Marcus's wedding, how could I not? She leaned in. But that's not all. We want to feature you in the festival's promotional campaign. Your story's exactly what we're looking for. Corporate dropout turned successful entrepreneur, preserving cultural heritage through food. And pissing off her family in the process, Kendall added helpfully. Amanda laughed. That too. The whole proving them wrong angle. People eat that up. No pun intended. Just then, Layla appeared behind Amanda, looking nervous in her designer suit. Lou, can we talk? Perfect timing, I said. We're planning a charity event. Want to help? Layla glanced around uncertainly, then straightened her shoulders. Actually, yes, and I might have an idea. We gathered around our tiny prep table as Layla pulled out her tablet. So, I may have mentioned your success to some people at work. Our marketing team is looking for local businesses to partner with for community outreach. Hold up, I interrupted. You want your fancy marketing firm to partner with your embarrassing food truck sister? Stop it, she said firmly. I was wrong, okay? We were all wrong. And I want to help make it right. Amanda clapped her hands. This is perfect. A corporate-sponsored charity event right before the food festival. The press will love it. My head spun. Press? Trust me, Amanda winked. I know some people at the local stations. Between this and the festival feature, you'll be the talk of the Bay Area food scene. Marin squeezed my arm. Think about it, Lou. This could help so many people. I looked at Layla, really looked at her. Gone was the condescending sister who'd sided with Gregory. In her place was someone who seemed genuinely excited about my success. Okay, I said, but we do this my way. No corporate sanitizing. This is about real food and real people. Agreed, Layla nodded. And I want to help cook, like we used to with Tita. The prep table went quiet. Kendall dropped a spoon. You want to cook? I asked carefully. You haven't cooked since Teta died, I know. Layla's voice softened. Maybe it's time to change that. Amanda cleared her throat. Well, this just got even better. Sister reunited with sister through family recipes. The media will... No, I cut her off. This part stays private. Some things aren't for publicity. Layla's eyes welled up. Thank you. We spent the next hour planning. The event would feature traditional Lebanese dishes, each with a story connecting it to the community we were helping. Layla's firm would handle promotion and matching donations. Maren offered her truck as additional kitchen space. One more thing, Layla said as she was leaving. Greg knows I'm here. He might tell Mom and Dad. Let him, I said, touching Tita's pendant. They can't stop this anymore. After everyone left, Kendall bumped my shoulder. You okay? Better than okay, I smiled, pulling out Teta's recipe book. We're going to need more za'atar. My phone buzzed again. Gregory this time. What did you say to Layla? She's lost her mind. I typed back, actually, big brother, I think she just found it. See you at the event. Turning back to the prep table, I felt lighter than I had in months. The charity event, the food festival, Layla's support, everything was falling into place. And somewhere, I knew Tita was watching, probably laughing at how her recipes were still bringing the family together, whether they liked it or not. You're doing it wrong, I said, watching Layla struggle with the grape leaves. Tita would be rolling in her grave seeing you roll these like burritos. Well, I'm sorry my grape leaf rolling skills got rusty during my years of corporate slavery, she laughed, trying again. We were in my apartment's kitchen, practicing for the charity event. Here, I demonstrated the technique. Tighter at the start, then gentle as you roll, like swaddling a baby. You sound just like her, Layla said softly. Remember how she'd smack our hands when we tried to sneak the finished ones? Only because you kept eating all the vegetarian ones before the meat ones were done. The doorbell rang, Maren arriving with more supplies. Ladies, the local news crew confirmed for next week. They want to film the prep and interview some of the single mums we're helping. Perfect, I said, checking my phone. Maria's bringing 5 other mums to help prep. They're all excited to learn the recipes. Speaking of excitement, Layla cleared her throat. Mum called me this morning. My hands froze mid-roll. And? She saw the event posting online. Dad too. They're coming. The grape leaf in my hand tore. What? They want to see what all the fuss is about. Greg's coming too. Maren whistled low. Full family reunion, huh? Should I bring popcorn? It's fine, I said, though my voice shook. They can come. They can see exactly what their street vendor daughter has built. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Your father and I will attend your event. Please dress appropriately. Dress appropriately, I read aloud. What does she think I'm going to wear? A garbage bag? Actually, Layla pulled out her phone, showing me a website. I might have an idea about that. The page showed modern, professional chefs' coats with Middle Eastern designs. They're hand-embroidered by immigrant women in Oakland, she explained. Part of that community outreach program I mentioned. Layla. I touched the screen, tracing the delicate patterns. These are beautiful. Already ordered one, with Teta's name embroidered in Arabic above the heart. I hugged her, getting flour all over her expensive blouse. When did you become so thoughtful? Probably around the time I realized my little food truck sister was braver than all of us combined. Maren cleared her throat. Hate to break up the sister moment, but we've got 50 pounds of potatoes to peel for the batata hara. We spent the next few hours prepping, testing recipes, and finalizing the event layout. Layla's grape leaves gradually improved, though she still couldn't match Teta's perfect rolls. The news crew wants to know our angle, Maren said, reading an email. They're thinking, corporate sister versus food truck sister, a story of redemption. No way, Layla and I said simultaneously. This isn't about family drama, I added. It's about community, about feeding people who need it, about— I touched my pendant, about legacy. Speaking of legacy, Layla pulled out an old photo from her purse. Found this in Mum's albums. The photo showed Tita at a community dinner, surrounded by women learning to cook. Her smile was radiant as she demonstrated how to shape man-oosh. Look at the date, Layla pointed. 1982, I read. Wait, isn't that when Mum was in college? Yeah, Tita was teaching cooking classes to new immigrants, helping them feel at home. The money helped pay Mum's tuition. My eyes stung. She never told us. Maybe she was trying to forget, Layla said. But I think that's why this bothers her so much. You're doing exactly what Teta did, and it reminds her of where she came from. Where we all came from, I corrected, whether they want to admit it or not. My phone chimed with another message, from Gregory this time. Dad's asking about investment opportunities in food truck fleets. What did you do to this family? I showed the message to Layla, who burst out laughing. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Ladies, Marin interrupted, focus. We have 3 days to prepare food for 200 people, coordinate with the news crew, and somehow survive a family reunion. Less laughing, more cooking. But as we worked into the evening, the laughter continued. Layla shared stories about Gregory's failed attempts to cook for his girlfriend. Marin taught us curse words in Spanish. Even Mum texted again, this time asking if she should bring Tita's special serving platters. You know what? I said, surveying our progress. Let them come. Let them all come. They'll see exactly what food truck success looks like. They'll see what family looks like, Layla corrected, finally mastering a perfect grape leaf roll, even if it takes some time to remember. Looking at my sister, covered in flour and beaming with pride over her grape leaves, I realized she was right. This wasn't just about proving them wrong anymore. It was about showing them who we really were, who we'd always been. 3 days to go. Bring it on. They're here, Kendall hissed, nudging me as I adjusted my new chef's coat. Through the crowd, I spotted my parents and Gregory, looking painfully overdressed for a food truck charity event. Keep cooking, I told the team of single moms working alongside us. This changes nothing. The event space buzzed with energy. Both food trucks were serving at full capacity, with lines wrapping around the block. Local news crews circulated, interviewing guests and filming the cooking demonstrations. Lucia, Mom's voice carried across the prep area. She stood awkwardly, clutching Teta's antique serving platters. Where should I put these? Over here, Layla jumped in, guiding her to the display table. Look, Mom, we're using Teta's recipes, just like she taught us. Mom's eyes swept over the scene, the women cooking, the crowds enjoying the food, the professional setup. Her expression wavered between pride and uncertainty. Is that Zata Manushi? A small voice piped up. One of Maria's twins stood in front of Mom, pointing at the platter she held. Yes, Mom answered automatically. My mother. She used to make it every morning. Lucia taught my mommy how to make it. The little girl beamed. Now we have it for breakfast too. I watched Mom's face soften as Maria approached. Your daughter's food truck changed our lives, Maria told her. Now I can cook healthy meals for my girls, and the support group has become like family. Before Mom could respond, the news crew descended. Mrs. Lewis, how does it feel seeing your daughter's success? Mom straightened her shoulders, years of social training kicking in. But before she could speak, Gregory cut in. Actually, our family has always supported local businesses, he said smoothly, stepping into frame. We're proud to see Lucia carrying on our grandmother's legacy. I nearly dropped my spatula. Kendall muttered, The audacity. Is that so? The reporter turned to me. Lucia, your brother seems very supportive. Has it always been this way? I locked eyes with Gregory, seeing the challenge there. He thought he could rewrite our story with one smooth interview. Actually, I said, This event is about something bigger than family drama. It's about community. Every woman here has a story about feeding their family against the odds. That's the legacy worth talking about. The reporter's eyes lit up. Can you tell us more about these women? I gestured to Maria and the others. Why don't you ask them yourself? They're the real story here. As the crew moved away, Dad approached the truck. Impressive setup, he said gruffly. Very professional. Thanks, I said, continuing to cook. Did you try the food yet? We were waiting for a good moment. The food's getting cold, Brandon, Mom called out, and I noticed she was already sampling the hummus with Maria's twins. This tastes just like your mother's. Here, I handed Dad a plate of shish tawuk. Teta's recipe, exactly how she made it for your law school graduation. His hands shook slightly as he took a bite. For a moment, he was silent. Well? I asked. It's perfect, he whispered. How did you remember? I paid attention, I said simply. Every Sunday in her kitchen, I paid attention. The event continued to buzz around us. Layla was teaching a group of women how to roll grape leaves, somewhat ironically, given her recent lessons. Gregory hovered near the news crew, occasionally glancing at the growing crowd with poorly concealed surprise. Lucia! Amanda from the festival committee waved frantically. The mayor just arrived. He wants to try everything. As I prepared a tasting platter, I caught sight of my reflection in the truck's window. The embroidered chef's coat gleamed under the lights, Teta's name in Arabic script right above my heart. Below it, the cedar tree pendant she gave me caught the sunlight. Your grandmother would be proud, a voice said. I turned to find Mom standing there, her eyes wet. Not just of the food, but of this. She gestured to the women cooking, the families eating, the community gathered together. Really? I asked. Because last month I was just a street vendor embarrassing the family. I was wrong, she said quietly. We were all wrong. This is exactly what she would have wanted. Before I could respond, Brandon Young himself, my father, stepped up to the truck window. Lucia, he said formally, I'd like to discuss a business proposition. Dad, I'm not coming back to corporate. No, he interrupted. I'd like to invest in your expansion plans. The kitchen fell silent. Even Kendall stopped cooking. What? I managed. Your brother did some research. Food truck empires are apparently quite profitable when properly managed. And with the festival coming up, I held up my hand. Let me stop you right there. I built this myself. Without family money, without family support. I'm not changing that now. He nodded slowly. I understand. But perhaps we could discuss it over dinner. Your mother could teach me how to make that hummus properly. Behind him, Mom was already exchanging recipes with Maria. We'll see, I said, but I was smiling. Right now, I have customers to feed. And they were finally among them. It's time for the speech, Kendall whispered, nudging me toward the small stage we'd set up. The evening sun cast long shadows across the event space, where hundreds of people still mingled, ate, and shared stories. I hate public speaking, I muttered, adjusting my chef's coat. Too bad, Maureen grinned. The news crews are waiting. Make it good. I took the microphone, heart pounding. My family sat in the front row, Mom still trading recipes with Maria, Dad taking notes on his phone, Gregory looking simultaneously impressed and uncomfortable. Layla gave me a thumbs up from where she stood with the other volunteers. When I started Zesty Za'atar, I began, people told me I was throwing my life away. Trading a corporate career for a food truck? It seemed crazy. The crowd quieted, listening. But here's the thing about food. It's never just about feeding people. It's about story, about heritage, about the grandmother who taught you how to fold grape leaves just right, or the mother who wakes up early to make man-ushi for her children. I touched Teta's pendant. My grandmother fed people because that's how she showed love. She taught cooking classes to immigrant women because she remembered what it was like to be new in this country, missing the tastes of home. Every recipe she passed down wasn't just about ingredients, it was about belonging. In the audience, Mom wiped her eyes. Today, when I watch Maria teach her daughters the recipes they learned from our truck, or see women from our support group sharing cooking tips, I realize something. Success isn't measured in corporate titles or corner offices. Gregory shifted in his seat. Success is measured in the lives you touch, the communities you build, the traditions you keep alive. I gestured to the women who'd been cooking alongside us. Every woman here has a story. Sarah works 3 jobs and still makes time to cook traditional meals for her kids. Amira started a small catering business after learning recipes here. Maria's twins now bring homemade Lebanese snacks to school and teach their friends the names in Arabic. The news cameras moved closer as I continued. Some people look at a food truck and see something small, something common. I met Gregory's eyes. But I look at this truck and see my grandmother's legacy. I see women supporting women. I see culture being preserved and passed on. I see strength. Layla was openly crying now, and even Gregory looked affected. To everyone who said I was making a mistake, thank you. Your doubt made me work harder. Your dismissal made me more determined. And your absence made room for this amazing community to become my new family. I raised my glass. To all the women here today who feed their families with love, who keep their traditions alive, who work impossible hours and still make time to learn new recipes. This success belongs to you too. And to my grandmother, who taught me that food is love, and love is revolution. This is all because of you. The crowd erupted in applause. Maria's twins ran up to hug me. Through tears, I saw Dad stand up, clapping with genuine pride on his face. But it was Gregory who reached the stage first. Lou, he said, taking the microphone. I need to say something. The crowd hushed. Kendall moved protectively closer to me. I was wrong, he said simply. We were all wrong. We measured success by our standards, not yours. But looking around today, he gestured to the thriving event, the news crews, the happy families. This is success by any measure. Mom stood up. May I? She took the microphone with trembling hands. My mother, your tita, used to say that food is memory. When she died, I tried to forget because remembering hurt too much. But watching you today, Lucia, you didn't just remember. You brought her back to life. You made her proud. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. Layla joined us on stage, wrapping an arm around me. And you, Mom turned to the crowd, all of you who supported my daughter when we didn't, thank you. Thank you for seeing what we were too blind to see. The news crews were eating it up, but I barely noticed them. For the first time since starting this journey, I felt truly seen by my family. Amanda rushed to the stage. Lucia, the festival committee just called. They want to feature Zesty Za'atar as the headline vendor next month. More applause, more tears, more hugs. As the evening wound down, I found myself sitting with my family, sharing plates of food just like we used to at Teta's house. Gregory was actually helping clean up. Dad was discussing expansion plans with Maria's husband, who owned a restaurant supply company. Mom and Layla were teaching the twins how to properly wrap stuffed grape leaves. You did it, Habibi, Kendall said, sitting beside me. You really did it. I watched my old family and new family blend together, sharing food and stories as the sun set over Silicon Valley. Success tasted like Za'atar and felt like home. No, I corrected her, touching Teta's pendant one last time. We did it, all of us. And somewhere I knew Teta was smiling. Perfect weather for the festival, Kendall said, as we set up our featured vendor booth at the Bay Area Food Festival. The morning fog was just lifting, revealing the waterfront location where thousands would soon gather. Almost too perfect, I agreed, arranging Teta's platters on our display. The festival organizers had given us prime positioning, complete with a demonstration kitchen and seating area. Need help with those? Gregory appeared, wearing a Zesty Za'atar t-shirt that still made me do a double take. He'd been showing up regularly at the truck since the charity event, learning recipes between his financial analyst shifts. "You can start the marinade," I said, "just like I showed you." "Don't let him near the tomb," Layla called out, arriving with Mom. They carried baskets of fresh herbs from Mum's garden. She'd started growing them specifically for the truck. "Very funny," Gregory muttered, but he was smiling. "One batch of garlic sauce goes wrong." "Wrong is an understatement," Kendall laughed. "That sauce could have stripped paint." The festival grounds buzzed with activity as other vendors set up. Several waved to us. We'd become part of the local food community, sharing tips and supporting each other's businesses. "Look who's here," Mom pointed. Maria and her twins approached, wearing matching aprons. "Ready to help," the girls chorused. They'd become regular fixtures at the truck, learning to cook alongside their mother. "Perfect timing," I said. "We need our best grape leaf rollers." Dad arrived last, carrying a surprise, Tita's old wooden rolling pin. "Found this in the attic," he said. "Thought you might want it for the demonstration." I ran my fingers over the worn wood, feeling the grooves from years of use. "It's perfect." The festival opened, and crowds poured in. Our line quickly became the longest, thanks partly to the charity event publicity. The news crew's feature had gone viral, drawing foodies from across the state. "Is it true?" a woman asked as I served her shawarma. "Did you really leave tech to start this?" "Best decision I ever made," I said, catching Gregory's eye as he expertly plated hummus. "Even better decision was letting us help," he added, making me laugh. The demonstration kitchen segment arrived faster than expected. I stood before the crowd, Teta's rolling pin in hand, ready to share her recipes. "Before we start," I said into the microphone, "I want to share something. This rolling pin belonged to my grandmother, who taught me that food is more than sustenance. It's story, it's family, it's love." The audience leaned in, captivated. She also taught me that success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. So today, I'm not just teaching you how to make manouche. I'm teaching you how to believe in your own path, even when others don't see it yet. Mom stepped forward. "And sometimes," she added, taking the microphone, "those who doubt you the most just need time to remember their own forgotten dreams." Together, we demonstrated Teta's techniques, sharing stories between steps. The audience asked questions, took notes, shared their own family recipes. It felt like one of Teta's cooking classes, expanded to include hundreds. Near the end of the day, Amanda rushed over with news. The festival committee voted. Zesty Za'atar won Best in Show. The celebration that followed blended everything I loved: family, food, community. Gregory high-fived Kendall. Layla hugged Maria's twins. Mom taught a group of young women how to properly blend za'atar, while Dad proudly filmed everything. "One more surprise," Layla announced, unveiling a frame. Inside was the photo of Teta teaching her cooking class, alongside a recent photo of me doing the same at the charity event. Below them, a news article headline read, "Legacy of Love: How One Food Truck Rebuilt a Family Through Food." "This belongs in the truck," Mom said softly, next to her recipes. As the festival wound down, we gathered for a family meal. Not just my biological family, but the entire extended family we'd built. Maria and her girls, Kendall and Maren, regular customers who'd become friends, all sharing dishes, swapping stories, building connections. "You know what this means," Gregory said, helping pack up. "You've officially surpassed my corporate success." "It was never a competition," I replied, but he shook his head. "Maybe not for you, but watching you succeed your way, it made me question everything I thought I knew about success." Mom overheard and joined us. "Your Tita used to say, 'Feed the body, nourish the soul.' I forgot that for a while. Thank you for remembering." Looking around at our expanded family, at the award-winning food truck that started it all, at Teta's rolling pin now passed to a new generation, I felt complete. Not because I'd proven them wrong, but because we'd all found our way back to what mattered most. "So," Dad called out, "who's hungry for dinner?" Everyone raised their hands, laughing, ready for another meal together. Because that's what family does. We gather, we eat, we love, we grow. Just like Tita taught us. Just like she always knew we would.
Hi, I'm Ava, a 29-year-old marketing specialist in a bustling tech company. My life took a significant turn 2 years ago when I married Jake, my colleague from the finance department. Our story wasn't just a romance, it was a journey that started in the least expected way, at our workplace, and blossomed into what seemed like a perfect life together. I remember the day I met Jake vividly. It was a typical busy morning at the office, and I was rushing through the cafeteria with a cup of coffee, my mind racing with deadlines and meetings. In my haste, I bumped into Jake, spilling coffee all over his neatly pressed shirt.
"Oh no.
I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, my face flushing with embarrassment. Jake, surprisingly calm, just chuckled and said, "Hey, no problem. It's just coffee. Happens all the time." That casual, friendly response was the start of something special. We began chatting more often, finding excuses to meet at the coffee machine or in the lunch area. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, ranging from work projects to our shared love for hiking and indie music. Jake had a charm and wit that was irresistible. Over time, our casual meetings turned into deliberate lunch dates. We'd find ourselves lost in conversations, and soon, those lunches turned into dinners. There was an undeniable connection between us, and it wasn't long before we started dating officially. One evening, as we walked through the city park, Jake stopped and looked at me with those warm, sincere eyes. "Ava, I know it's only been a few months, but I feel like I've known you forever." "You're amazing," he said. I felt my heart skip a beat. "Jake, I feel the same way." "There's something special about us," I replied, my hand finding his. Introducing Jake to my parents was the next big step. Coming from a traditional background, they had certain expectations about marriage and family roles. My mom always emphasized the importance of being a homemaker, while my dad often talked about the stability a man should bring into a household. "Dad, Mom, I want you to meet Jake. He's not just my boyfriend, he's my partner in every sense," I told them one Sunday afternoon. Jake was his charming self, but I could sense the apprehension in my parents. "Ava, we just want to make sure you can balance your work and home. It's a lot to handle," my mom expressed her concern. Jake took my hand and addressed them confidently, "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I respect your values, and I assure you, Ava and I are a team. We'll support each other in every aspect of our lives." Deciding to move in together was a big decision, but it felt right. Jake's house was a quaint, cozy place, nestled in a quiet neighborhood. We spent days turning it into our home, picking out furniture, painting walls, and sharing laughter and dreams. "Look at us, building our future together, brick by brick," Jake said one evening as we hung a painting in the living room. I remember feeling a sense of contentment, standing there with him in our home, a place that symbolized our love and partnership. "Our little paradise," I replied, a smile spreading across my face. Life in our little paradise took an exciting turn when I discovered I was pregnant. I remember holding the positive test, my heart pounding with a mix of joy and disbelief. Sharing the news with Jake was a moment I had dreamt about. "Jake, I have something amazing to tell you," I said one evening, the test hidden behind my back. He looked up, curious. "What's up, Ava?" I held out the test to him, watching his eyes widen with realization. "We're going to be parents." Jake's reaction was priceless. He swept me into his arms, spinning me around. "This is the best news ever. I can't believe we're going to have a baby." However, the initial euphoria soon gave way to the harsh realities of a challenging pregnancy. Nausea and extreme fatigue became my constant companions. My senses heightened to the point where even the smell of coffee, which I once loved, made my stomach churn. As my condition worsened, I found myself unable to cope with everyday tasks. I would sit at the kitchen table, head resting in my hands, feeling utterly drained. Jake would find me like that after coming back from work. "Ava, are you okay? You look exhausted, he'd say, his face lined with concern. I tried to put on a brave face. I'll be fine. It's just the pregnancy taking its toll. Realizing I couldn't continue like this, I made the difficult decision to go on maternity leave, albeit without pay. I broke the news to Jake, hoping for his understanding. Jake, I can't keep up with work anymore. I'm going on maternity leave, I told him hesitantly. He frowned, clearly not pleased. Unpaid leave? Ava, that's going to be tough on us financially. I felt a sting of guilt, knowing he was right, but I had no choice. I know, but I can barely get through the day. As days passed, our once tidy home started reflecting my inability to keep up. Piles of laundry, unwashed dishes, and takeout boxes became a common sight. Jake's frustration began to show. One day, he came home to find me lying on the couch, too nauseated to move. The house was in disarray. Ava, what's going on? Why isn't any of this done? He snapped, gesturing to the messy room. I felt a lump form in my throat. I'm sorry, Jake. I can't. He let out a sigh of exasperation and walked away. That night, we ate in silence, the air thick with unspoken tension and disappointment. As my pregnancy progressed, so did the difficulties at home. The once joyful anticipation of our baby was overshadowed by the increasing strain between Jake and me. Our home, once a haven of love and comfort, began to feel like a battleground. With my health not improving, I found even the simplest tasks overwhelming. Our home started to reflect this neglect. Dirty dishes piled up, laundry lay forgotten, and the dust settled on every surface. I could barely muster the energy to get off the couch, let alone clean. One particularly tough day, Jake came home to a sink full of dishes and takeout containers littering the table. His patience, it seemed, had reached its limit. Seriously, Ava? It's like a pigsty in here, he exclaimed, his voice tinged with frustration and anger. I looked up from the couch, feeling a mix of guilt and helplessness. Jake, I can't keep up. You know how hard this has been for me. Jake's demeanor had shifted from his usual caring self to someone I hardly recognized. He started spending more time away from home, often coming back late. His annoyance was palpable every time he stepped into our increasingly chaotic house. Ava, when I come home, I want to relax, not clean up this mess, he argued one evening, his tone harsh and accusing. I tried to explain, my voice weak and shaky. I understand, but I'm doing the best I can. This pregnancy is it's so hard. Things reached a breaking point one evening when I mustered all my strength to tidy up. I was halfway through doing the dishes when Jake walked in. What, now you decide to clean? A little late for that, don't you think? He said mockingly, watching me struggle. Tears welled up in my eyes. I'm trying, Jake. I'm trying so hard, I whispered, feeling utterly defeated. Jake let out a sigh of frustration and walked away, leaving me there, alone and heartbroken. The growing strain at home with Jake left me feeling isolated and desperate for support. I hoped turning to my parents, who had always been my rock, would provide some comfort. But the conversation that unfolded only added to my turmoil. I called my parents one evening, my heart heavy with the burden of my struggles. Mom, Dad, I'm really having a hard time, I began, my voice laced with hope and desperation. The pregnancy is taking a toll on me, and Jake, he doesn't understand. There was a pause on the line, a silence that felt uncomfortably long. Then my mother's voice came through, stern and unsympathetic. Ava, pregnancy is hard for every woman. You need to push through and take care of your home. That's your responsibility. I felt a surge of frustration. Mom, it's not just about pushing through. I'm sick all the time, and Jake is barely around to help. Her response was immediate and dismissive. When I was pregnant with you, I managed everything without complaining. You're not the first woman to go through this, Ava. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But Mom, every pregnancy is different. I'm really struggling here, I tried to explain, my voice cracking. There was no empathy in her reply. You need to be a better wife, Ava. It's not Jake's job to clean and cook. You're making excuses. My father, who had been silent, finally spoke up, his voice echoing my mother's traditional views. Your mother is right, Ava. You have duties as a wife. It's important to uphold your responsibilities in your marriage. I felt a wave of helplessness wash over me. Dad, I just need a bit of understanding and support. It's really tough right now. His tone was firm, unwavering. This is part of marriage, Ava. You need to find a way to manage. The call ended with me feeling more alone than I had ever felt. The people I had looked up to my whole life, who I thought would understand, were instead imposing the same traditional pressures that were suffocating me. My struggle was dismissed as a lack of effort, my feelings invalidated. As I hung up the phone, tears streamed down my face. The support I so desperately needed was denied, leaving me feeling abandoned and misunderstood. The emotional turmoil of this conversation added another heavy layer to the already overwhelming stress of my difficult pregnancy and troubled marriage. Alone in my room, I couldn't help but feel trapped. How was I to navigate this challenging phase of my life when those closest to me turned a blind eye to my suffering? Amid the chaos of my difficult pregnancy and the mounting tension at home, a new worry began to gnaw at me. Jake's behavior had changed drastically, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that something more was going on. Jake started coming home late more often than not, his excuses vague and his demeanor distant. One evening, as he walked through the door well past midnight, I couldn't hold back my concern. Jake, it's past midnight. Where have you been? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the worry in my heart. He shrugged off his coat with an air of indifference. Work stuff, Ava. You wouldn't understand. His dismissive tone stung, and I pressed on, you never used to be this late. It's happening too often. Jake avoided my gaze, his reply short and sharp. Things change, Ava. Work is demanding right now. A week later, another piece was added to the puzzle of my suspicions. Jake came home one evening, and as I leaned in to greet him, a faint but distinct scent of perfume hit me, a scent that was unfamiliar and certainly not mine. Jake, what's that smell? I asked, sniffing subtly. He stiffened, a flash of something crossing his face before he masked it. What smell? It's probably just from the office. You know how it is. But I knew it wasn't, just from the office. My heightened senses were picking up something else, something that didn't belong. As days passed, Jake's coldness grew. He barely spoke to me, and when he did, his words were often sharp and critical. One night, as we sat in silence at dinner, I attempted to bridge the growing gap between us. Jake, is everything okay? You seem so distant lately, I ventured, hoping for some honest communication. Jake's response was curt, his tone cold. I'm fine, Ava. Just tired, that's all. His words felt like a barrier, shutting me out. The man who had once been my partner and confidant was now a stranger sitting across from me. Left alone with my thoughts, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. Was Jake seeing someone else? The late nights, the unfamiliar perfume, and his increasing indifference were pieces of a puzzle that formed a picture I was afraid to confront. The day that shattered the remnants of my fairy tale life arrived without warning. It was a quiet afternoon, and I was resting on the couch, battling the constant fatigue that had become my constant companion. The sound of the front door opening jolted me back to reality. I struggled to sit up as Jake walked in, not alone, but with a young woman beside him. She was laughing at something he said, her laughter echoing mockingly in our once peaceful home. Jake, what's going on? Who is this? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and fear. Jake looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. This is Lisa, he said bluntly. She works with me. Lisa glanced at me, her eyes roaming over my pregnant figure with a sneer. So, this is her, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. The atmosphere was charged with tension, and I felt a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. Jake, why is she here? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake's response was like a slap in the face. Ava, I'm done with this, he said, gesturing at me with a look of disgust. I can't deal with you anymore. I've been promoted at work, and I've moved on. I felt my world crumbling around me. Moved on? What are you saying, Jake? He didn't even flinch. I'm saying it's over between us. Lisa and I are together now. I want you out of this house. Lisa's laughter rang out again, mocking my pain. Look at her, Jake. She actually thought you'd stay with her. I struggled to process the cruelty and betrayal. But I'm pregnant, Jake. I'm carrying your child, I whispered, my voice breaking. His reply was cold and merciless. I don't care. It's not my problem. Pack your things and leave. They left the house together, leaving me alone, shattered, and in disbelief. I sat there, numb, unable to comprehend the brutal reality of my situation. The man I had loved and trusted, the father of my unborn child, had just abandoned me for someone else, in the most callous way possible. Reeling from Jake's betrayal, I found myself in a state of utter despair. Pregnant, alone, and with nowhere to turn, I dialed my parents' number, my hands shaking and my heart heavy with a mix of fear and hope. Mom, Dad, Jake, he's left me. He was having an affair, I managed to say through tears. There was a stunned silence on the other end before my mother's voice, cold and disapproving, filled the line. Ava, you must have done something to drive him away. A man doesn't just leave without a reason. Her words were like daggers to my heart. Mom, how can you say that? He brought another woman into our home and told me to leave. My father's voice then came, stern and unwavering. Ava, you know our stance on divorce. It's a disgrace. You need to fix your marriage, not run away from it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Fix it? Dad, he's already left me. He doesn't want me or the baby. My mother's response was final. We can't help you, Ava. You need to sort this out with Jake. We won't accept you back like this. The call ended with a click, leaving me in a state of shock. My own parents, who I thought would be my sanctuary in my darkest hour, had turned their backs on me. At this moment, I thought of the one person who had always shown me a different perspective on life, my Aunt Clara. My parents had severed ties with her because she chose to dedicate her life to her career, a decision they never approved of. But despite their disapproval, I had always maintained a secret bond with her. With my heart pounding and hands trembling, I dialed her number. It was a call for help, a beacon of hope in my hour of need. Aunt Clara, it's Ava, I said, my voice quivering. I'm in trouble. Her response was immediate, her voice filled with concern. Ava, tell me what happened. You know you can always count on me. I poured out my heart to her, telling her about Jake's betrayal, my parents' harsh rejection, and the hopeless situation I found myself in. With each word, I felt the weight on my chest lighten, if only a little. Aunt Clara listened in silence, her presence over the phone a comforting embrace. When I finished, she spoke with a firmness that was both reassuring and commanding. Ava, listen to me. You are not alone. Do not go anywhere. Stay put. I will handle this, she said with conviction. Her words were like a lifeline, pulling me out of the depths of my despair. But Aunt Clara, what can you do? Everything's a mess. Ava, you know me. I have my ways. I've faced tougher situations in my career, and I won't let anyone harm my niece. Trust me, I will set things right, she assured me with a confidence that was both bold and comforting. As I hung up the phone, a sense of calm enveloped me. The storm wasn't over, but now I wasn't facing it alone. Sitting in the living room, I hadn't packed a single thing. I was waiting, calm but anxious, for Jake to return. When the door swung open and he stormed in with Lisa, his expression changed from smug satisfaction to fury as he saw the untouched boxes. "Why haven't you packed? You're supposed to be out of here," Jake shouted, his face red with anger. I couldn't help but smile, a sense of serene confidence enveloping me. "I'm not going anywhere, Jake," I said calmly. "I have a reliable defender." His rage turned to confusion, and before he could retort, the kitchen door opened. Out stepped Aunt Clara, composed and authoritative, accompanied by a sharply dressed man I recognized as a lawyer. Jake's face turned white as a sheet, his earlier bravado disappearing. "Jake, Lisa, may I present to you my Aunt Clara?" I said, pleased with her dramatic entrance. She held up her hand, a signal that she was in control now. "I think I've heard enough, Jake. And you, Lisa, this is not your concern anymore." Jake, now looking like a deer caught in headlights, managed to stutter out, "You are the CEO." "That's right," Aunt Clara replied coolly. "And you, Jake, have just lost not just your promotion but also your job." His shock was palpable, but Aunt Clara wasn't done yet. "And the gentleman here," she gestured to the lawyer, "has recorded every insult you hurled at Ava." I couldn't help but feel a wave of relief and vindication. I never advertised that my aunt was the CEO of the company, Jake. But she is, and she's on my side. Aunt Clara's voice was stern. "Your worthlessness has been duly noted, Jake. You're not only losing your job but prepared to be shaken down for every last cent for your child and for the emotional distress you caused Ava." As Jake and Lisa hastily retreated, their defeat evident, I realized this was more than just a victory. It was justice, a powerful, resounding justice. Aunt Clara, the woman who had silently been my pillar of strength, had not just promised support, she had delivered it in the most formidable way. Well, what about Jake? I will leave him in the past, along with his ruined career and ruined reputation. Do I feel sorry for him? No, not a bit. It is how karma works. Hey, there, I'm Emma. My story starts when I was 27, at a friend's birthday bash. That's where I first locked eyes with Jake. He stood out in the crowd, tall and with a smile that could light up a room. He worked in finance, something with stocks, I guess. He approached me with a confidence that was hard to ignore, and we hit it off instantly. It was all laughs and shared interests. I remember thinking, wow, this guy is something special. We started dating, and it was like living a fairy tale. Jake was all about grand gestures. I'd find bouquets of roses at my doorstep, surprise dinner dates at fancy restaurants. He was full-on Prince Charming. But it wasn't just the material stuff. He had a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the world. But looking back, there were signs I wish I hadn't ignored. One evening, as he handed me yet another extravagant gift, I tried to protest. "Jake, this is too much. You really don't have to," I said, feeling a bit overwhelmed. He just chuckled, "Emma, nothing's too much for you. I want to give you the world." It was sweet, but a bit intense. Fast forward a year, and we're getting hitched. Our wedding was a dream, beautiful venue, perfect dress, the works. But amidst the celebration, I caught glimpses of something else. Jake's mom, Evelyn, was there, of course. Dressed impeccably, she had this air of superiority. She made comments on everything, from the flower arrangements to the way I held my bouquet. "Emma, dear, make sure you're smiling properly for the photos," she'd say with a critical eye. It felt more like a photo shoot than my wedding day. After the wedding, things took a turn. Jake's obsession with material possessions became apparent. He bought an expensive car, but it was more a trophy than a vehicle. I once suggested we take it for a spin. "Emma, we can't. It's not just a car. It's a status symbol." "What if something happens to it?" he said, almost panicking at the thought. It felt ridiculous. This car, meant for driving, was just sitting there, untouched. Another time, we argued about it. Why have it if you never use it, Jake? It's just sitting there, gathering dust. He retorted sharply, you just don't get it, Emma. It's about status, about showing the world who we are. It was like talking to a wall. Our conversation started to feel hollow, more about things than us. Visiting Evelyn's house was like stepping into another world. She lived alone, but her place was filled with expensive and used stuff. Everything was covered in sheets, like they were too precious to be exposed to air. I remember asking Jake about it once, why does your mom cover everything? It's creepy. He shrugged, she says it's to keep them in mint condition. You know how she is about her things. It hit me then, Jake's obsession with material things wasn't just his, it was a family trait. I felt like I was living in a museum, not a home. The warmth we had was replaced by cold, hard things. And the worst part? I was starting to feel like just another one of Jake's prized possessions. One evening, I came home to find Jake standing in the living room, admiring a new, absurdly expensive-looking vase. Emma, check this out. It's a 19th century antique. Cost a fortune, but it's worth every penny, he said, his eyes gleaming with pride. I looked at the vase, then back at him. Jake, where are we even going to put this? It doesn't fit with anything we have. He shrugged off my concern. It's not about fitting in, Emma. It's about having the best. You need to start appreciating these things. His tone was dismissive, like my opinion didn't matter. This wasn't the Jake I married. Then there was the incident with the living room furniture. Jake brought home a set of chairs and a sofa that looked more like art pieces than something you'd actually sit on. I remember saying, Jake, these look great, but are they even comfortable? Our old couch was so cozy. He fired back, comfort? Emma, you need to see the bigger picture. This is designer furniture. We can't just think about comfort. I tried sitting on one of the chairs, only to get a stern look from him. Careful. Do you know how much that costs? We can't risk damaging it. Our conversation started to revolve around the price and prestige of things, rather than our day-to-day life. It was all about what we owned, not how we lived. I felt like a visitor in my own home, tiptoeing around these expensive treasures. The dining room was another example. Jake replaced our old dining table with a massive, ornate one that looked like it belonged in a castle. Jake, this table is huge. It's just us two. Why do we need something so grand? I asked, feeling out of place in my own dining room. He just laughed. Emma, you need to think big. This is how successful people live. I missed our old table. It had scratches and stains, sure, but each one had a story, a memory. This new one felt cold and impersonal. The final straw was the art. Jake started buying paintings. I'm no art critic, but even I could tell they were more about price tags than passion. Another painting, Jake? Do you even like these? I questioned, staring at the latest addition to our gallery. He responded, almost robotically, it's not about liking, Emma. It's an investment. It shows we have class. I realized then that our home wasn't ours anymore. It was a showcase for Jake's wealth and status, a place where things mattered more than people. It was around this time that things between Jake and me really started to unravel. We were drifting apart, and it felt like we were living completely separate lives under the same roof. One day, I tried to have a heart-to-heart with him. I found Jake in his office, surrounded by his precious collections. Jake, we need to talk, I began, feeling a knot in my stomach. This isn't the life I envisioned for us. Our home feels like a cold gallery. He barely looked up from his papers. Emma, that's just how it is when you move up in the world. You need to adjust. His words stung. Adjust? Jake, I feel like I'm living with a stranger. You care more about your things than us. Jake finally looked at me, his eyes cold. Maybe you're the one who's changed. You used to admire my ambition. It was like talking to a wall. He just couldn't see how his obsession with material things was tearing us apart. Then came the crystal set incident with his mom, Evelyn. She'd come over one day, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we could have a nice family dinner. I decided to use the crystal dining set Jake's grandmother had left him. It was beautiful and, I thought, perfect for a special family dinner. Big mistake. As soon as Evelyn saw the table, her face turned red with anger. What on earth are you doing, Emma? Using the crystal set for a casual dinner? Are you out of your mind? I was taken aback. Evelyn, it's just a dinner set. I thought it would be nice to use it for once. Jake walked in, and instead of backing me up, he sided with his mother. Emma, you should have known better. These are not for everyday use. They're valuable. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Valuable? Jake, they're just collecting dust in a cabinet. What's the point of having them if we never use them? His response was curt. It's about preserving their value, Emma. Not everything has to be used. That was the moment I realized our relationship had hit rock bottom. Jake and his mother were more concerned about preserving things than enjoying them or nurturing our relationships. From that point on, things only got worse. Jake became more distant, and I felt lonelier than ever in our perfect home. His priorities were clear, and sadly, our marriage wasn't one of them. I decided to file for divorce. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I needed. After the finalization of my divorce, I felt a profound need to escape, to find solace away from the chaos that had engulfed my life. Seeking a fresh start, or at least a temporary respite, I planned a solitary trip to the seaside. It seemed like the perfect way to celebrate my newfound freedom and to reflect on the tumultuous journey I had just endured. 1 week into my serene escape, while I was lounging on the beach, my phone erupted with the harsh ring of an incoming call. The screen displayed Jake's name, stirring a whirlwind of emotions within me. With a heavy sigh, I answered, bracing myself for what was to come. The moment I greeted him, Jake's voice, thick with fury, boomed through the phone. Emma, what the hell have you done to my house? My paintings, my furniture, everything's ruined. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding. Jake, what are you talking about? I've been at the sea for a week. I haven't been anywhere near the house. His accusations grew louder, more frantic. Don't play games with me, Emma. This has your spite written all over it. Flustered and shaken, I struggled to make sense of his words. Jake, I swear, I haven't done anything. I don't know what's happened, but it wasn't me. He hung up abruptly, leaving me in a state of shock and confusion. Panic set in, and I hastily packed my belongings, cutting my trip short. The drive back home was agonizing, filled with a mix of fear and dread about what I would find. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Upon arriving home, the scene that greeted me was beyond anything I had imagined. The living room, once a pristine showcase of Jake's expensive tastes, was in utter disarray. The designer furniture was scratched and damaged, and the paintings that Jake had so meticulously selected were torn and defaced. It was a scene of deliberate vandalism, a targeted destruction of the material possessions he had valued so highly. I stood amidst the chaos, struggling to process the extent of the damage when my phone rang again. This time, it was Evelyn, Jake's mother. Her voice oozed with a vindictive satisfaction as she spoke. I hope you're happy now, Emma. Seeing all of Jake's precious things destroyed must be quite satisfying for you. Stunned, I managed to reply, Evelyn, what are you talking about? Did you do this? Her laughter was cold, devoid of any remorse. Well, I couldn't let you enjoy all these things after the divorce. I thought I'd take them away from you, just like you took my son away. I couldn't help but nervous laugh. Evelyn, you've made a terrible mistake. The court awarded these items to Jake, not me. You've destroyed your own son's property. There was a moment of silence as the truth sank in. No, that can't be. They were supposed to be yours, to punish you. The call ended abruptly, leaving me in a state of shock. Reeling from the shock of Evelyn's confession and the state of my home, I was trying to make sense of it all when my phone rang again. It was Jake. Bracing myself for another round of accusations, I answered. Emma, this is not over. You'll pay for what you've done, he seethed without any greetings. Jake, listen to me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Your mother just called. She admitted to destroying your stuff, thinking it was mine. There was a pause on the line, a silence filled with disbelief. What? My mother? No, you're lying. She wouldn't do something like that. I felt a surge of frustration. Why would I lie about this, Jake? She thought she was getting back at me for the divorce. She didn't know the court awarded those items to you. The skepticism in his voice was palpable. I don't believe you. She wouldn't. Check your mail, Jake. I recorded a phone conversation with her in which she admitting everything. Listen to it yourself. Another pause followed, longer this time. If this is true, Emma. It is true, Jake. Your mother made a huge mistake. The call ended abruptly, and I was left standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the remnants of Jake's prized possessions, feeling a bizarre mixture of vindication and sadness. A few hours later, Jake called back, his tone now a mix of anger and confusion. I heard the record. I can't believe she would go this far. This changes things. I need to deal with her.
Yeah,
you do. And Jake, I had nothing to do with this. I hope you understand that now. The situation quickly escalated into a legal mess, with Jake deciding to sue his own mother. I watched the whole drama unfold with a sense of irony. It was almost poetic justice, the woman who raised a son to worship material things now being sued by him for destroying those very things. Jake called me a few days after he filed the lawsuit, sounding all worked up. Emma, can you believe this? I'm suing my own mother. I couldn't help but laugh. Well, Jake, looks like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You and your mother are more alike than you think. He didn't find it amusing. This isn't a joke, Emma. She destroyed property worth $90,000. Oh, I know it's serious. But come on, Jake. You're suing your mom over things? Didn't you learn anything from our divorce? He was silent for a moment, probably not expecting my blunt response. I have no choice, Emma. She went too far. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. You always have a choice, Jake. You chose things over people, and look where it got you. The court sessions were a spectacle. Jake, usually so composed, was now embroiled in a bitter legal battle with Evelyn. She seemed to fluctuate between regret and stubbornness. I bumped into Jake outside the courtroom once, and I couldn't resist a jab. How's it feel, Jake? Taking your own mother to court? He looked defeated, a shadow of his former self. I never wanted it to come to this. I scoffed. What did you expect? You and your mom, always placing things above everything else. The judge eventually ruled in Jake's favor. Evelyn was ordered to pay a full sum for the damages. When Jake called to tell me about the verdict, I felt no sympathy for him. So, you won. Happy now? I asked, my tone laced with sarcasm. It's not about winning, Emma. It's a mess, he replied, sounding drained. Maybe now you'll understand, Jake. Life's about more than just stuff. You and your mother, you really deserve each other. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Watching Jake and his mother entangled in this legal and emotional chaos, I realized how far I'd come from being part of that world. After the whole lawsuit drama, things calmed down, but the air was still thick with tension and unresolved feelings. Jake and his mother were no longer on speaking terms, and the once grand and proud home now felt more like a battleground. A few weeks later, I ran into Jake at a local coffee shop. It was an awkward encounter, but I couldn't resist striking up a conversation, curious about how he was coping. "Hey, Jake, how's life treating you after the big court drama?" I asked, unable to hide the sarcasm in my voice. He looked up, weary and deflated. "Emma, it's been tough. Mom and I haven't spoken since the verdict." I sipped my coffee, trying to mask my indifference. "Well, what did you expect? You sued your own mother." He sighed, running his hands through his hair. I know, but she crossed a line. It's complicated." I shrugged. "Seems pretty straightforward to me. You both worshipped material things, and look where it got you." Jake looked down, the weight of the situation sinking in. I guess I never realized how far we'd gone until it was too late. I couldn't help but feel a hint of satisfaction seeing him finally confront the consequences of his and his mother's actions. Sometimes, Jake, you have to lose things to understand their true value. And I'm not just talking about money or stuff. He nodded, a somber look in his eyes. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us, about my mom, about what really matters." "It's a hard lesson to learn," I replied, finishing my coffee. "But maybe now you can start focusing on what really counts in life." As I stood up to leave, I looked at Jake, once so proud and confident, now humbled by his own actions. "Take care of yourself, Jake. And maybe try caring about people more than things." Walking away, I felt a sense of closure. The whole ordeal had been a roller coaster of emotions, but it also served as a stark reminder of what happens when material possessions take precedence over relationships. It was a chapter of my life that I was more than ready to leave behind. After everything that had happened, my life took a turn for the better. I became tougher, more determined, and I relished the freedom I had gained from the shackles of my former life. I had no regrets, no sympathy for Jake or his mother, and I was enjoying every moment of my new, simpler life. One evening, while having a casual dinner at my comfortably modest home with my friend Sarah, the conversation turned to Jake and his mother. "Can you believe Evelyn had to get a job to pay back the 90 grand she owes Jake?" I said, shaking my head in disbelief but with a smirk on my face. Sarah laughed. "It's like a soap opera, but you can't make this stuff up." She really shot herself in the foot. I raised an eyebrow. "I know, right? After all her high and mighty act, look where she ended up. Working to pay off her own son. It's karma at its finest." Sarah nodded in agreement. "And what about Jake? How's he handling all this?" I shrugged, taking a sip of my wine. "Who knows? Who cares? They're both out of my life, and that's all that matters. I've got my peace back, and that's priceless." We both chuckled, relishing the irony of the situation. The conversation moved on to how different my life was now, devoid of the luxury but filled with real comfort. "You know, I love your place. It's so, you. No fancy stuff, just real, lived-in charm," Sarah remarked, looking around appreciatively. I grinned, feeling a surge of pride. "Thanks, Sarah. That's exactly what I was going for. A home, not a showroom. It's amazing to live in a place where I can actually touch things without worrying about their price tag." We spent the rest of the evening chatting and laughing, a stark contrast to the tense, uncomfortable gatherings at my old house. It felt good to have a space that was truly mine, reflecting my personality, not my social status. As Sarah left, she said, "You seem so much happier now, Emma. It's like you've finally found your place." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "I have, Sarah. I really have. I've learned that happiness isn't about owning things, but about living life on your own terms." That night, as I sat in my cozy living room, I felt a deep sense of peace. I had escaped a life where material possessions ruled and entered a world where simplicity and comfort were my treasures. I had no regrets, only gratitude for the lessons learned and the new path I had chosen. This was my new beginning, and I was embracing it with open arms. The silence in my apartment was comfortable, a contrast to the buzz of my recent college graduation. Economics books lay scattered around, a testament to the journey I'd just completed. I was lost in thought about my future when my phone broke the silence, displaying Linda's name. I expected a casual chat, as usual. "Hey, Linda, what's going on?" I said, expecting to hear about her day or some new recipe she tried. "Eva," Linda's voice was a mix of panic and despair, "your dad, he's kicked me out. He's marrying someone else, some young girl. I don't know what to do." I bolted upright. "What the hell? He did what? That's insane." "I'm serious. He just told me and..." "I'm lost, Eva. I need your help." Rage bubbled inside me. "This is unbelievable. He can't just throw you out. Stay right where you are. I'm coming over. We're going to sort this mess out." I hung up, my mind racing. Linda had been more than a stepmom. She'd been my rock since Mom passed away when I was just 7. She listened to me, cared for me, even dealt with my teenage tantrums. And Dad? How could he do this to her? To us? I grabbed my keys and jacket, storming out of the apartment. The drive over was a blur, my mind replaying every warm moment Linda and I shared, contrasted sharply against the cold betrayal of my father. Pulling up to the house, I saw Linda sitting on the porch, a picture of misery. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands trembling. "Eva," she said weakly as I approached, "I don't know where to go." I sat beside her, my anger simmering. "This is total crap, Linda. Dad's lost his mind. You've been nothing but amazing to us. How dare he treat you like this?" "I thought we were happy," she whispered. "I thought we had a good life together." "Well, he's clearly delusional," I said, gritting my teeth. "You don't deserve this. We'll fight this, Linda. I won't let him get away with it." We stood up, determination in our steps. "Let's go inside," I said, "we need to plan our next move." "And Dad? He's going to have to answer to me." Linda and I entered the living room to find my father, Richard, lounging with a young woman. My heart sank and my blood boiled as I recognized her, Rachel, the queen bee of my high school bullies. "What the hell is going on here, Dad?" I demanded, my voice sharp, trying to control the anger bubbling inside me. Richard looked up, unfazed. "Eva, this is Rachel, my fiancée, you remember her, don't you?" Rachel stood up, smirking. "Oh, Eva, still the little mouse from high school? How quaint." My fists clenched. "Linda is devastated because of you, Dad." Richard shrugged, annoyance flickering in his eyes. "People change, Eva. Linda and I are done. That's life." Linda's voice quivered as she spoke. "Was I just a chapter in your life, Richard? Was our marriage nothing to you?" Rachel's laugh was sharp and cold. "Drama, drama, drama. He's moved on. Maybe you should too." I stepped forward, my anger reaching its peak. "How dare you? Dad, she's a venomous snake. She made my life a living hell, and now you're marrying her." Richard stood up, his voice stern. "Enough, Eva. Your schoolyard squabbles don't matter. I've made my choice." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Your choice? You're destroying everything for a fling with a high school bully." Rachel sneered. "Jealous much? Once we're married, I'll make sure your father sees you for the nuisance you are." Furious, I retorted, "You think you can scare me? I'm not that scared little girl anymore. This isn't over." Grabbing Linda's hand, I stormed out of the room, my head spinning with rage and disbelief. In the guest room, Linda broke down, and I held her, promising that I wouldn't let them get away with this. "Richard will pay for this," I whispered to myself. "They both will." The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. Not only had my father turned his back on Linda, but he'd also chosen the one person who tormented me through my childhood. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a personal attack. The atmosphere in the dining room was thick with tension as we all sat down for dinner. The table was set impeccably, a stark contrast to the turmoil bubbling under the surface. Richard and Rachel sat at one end, chatting and laughing as if nothing was amiss. Linda and I sat opposite them, our plates untouched. I broke the silence, unable to contain my frustration. "So, Dad, is this how you treat the woman who stood by you for 20 years? Toss her aside like she's nothing?" Richard, sipping his wine nonchalantly, replied, "Eva, life's about moving forward. I'm doing what makes me happy." Rachel chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. "Oh, come on, Linda. You had your time. Now it's my turn." Linda, her voice barely above a whisper, said, "I loved you, Richard. I gave you everything." Richard shrugged. "And I appreciate it, but it's time for a change." I slammed my hand on the table. "This is just cruel. You're acting like heartless monsters." Rachel smirked.
Aww.
"Is someone upset? Can't handle the truth?" I glared at her. "The truth? You're a homewrecker, Rachel. And you, Dad, you're a spineless traitor." Richard's face hardened. "Watch your mouth, Eva. I won't tolerate disrespect in my house." Linda stood up, her hands trembling. "Your house. I made this house a home for us, for Eva. And this is how you repay me?" Rachel laughed. "Please, you're just embarrassing yourself. Richard deserves someone young, vibrant, not a sad, old." I cut her off, fury boiling inside me. "Shut up, Rachel. Just shut up. You have no idea what family means, what loyalty is." Richard stood up, pointing a finger at me. "Enough, Eva. I won't be spoken to like that in my own home. You either respect my decisions or you leave." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Respect? There's nothing respectable about what you're doing. You've lost my respect, Dad." After the disastrous dinner, Linda and I retreated to the guest room, the only place in the house that felt somewhat safe. We were both emotionally drained, but sleep was the last thing on our minds. As I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything, there was a soft knock on the door. I opened it to find Rachel standing there, a smug look plastered across her face. "Can't sleep, Eva? Guilty conscience," she taunted. I clenched my jaw. "What do you want, Rachel?" She stepped closer, her voice slow and menacing. "I just wanted to make sure you understand the new order of things. Your dad's mine now, and soon, everything he owns will be too." I stood my ground, despite the churning in my stomach. "You think you can just waltz in and take over? You're delusional." Rachel laughed, her eyes glinting with malice. "Delusional? Honey, I'm being practical. And just so you know, once I'm the lady of this house, I'll make sure your father cuts you off. No more daddy's money, no more cushy life." Her words stung, but I refused to show any weakness. "You think you can scare me? I've dealt with worse than you." Rachel leaned in, her breath foul with the scent of wine. "Oh, I remember how easy it was to make you cry in school. Guess some things never change. But let me give you a little advice. Take your precious Linda and get out before things get ugly." I felt a surge of anger. "You don't scare me, Rachel. You're just a bully, and bullies are cowards at heart." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that. Just remember, I always get what I want. And right now, I want you gone. You're alone in this, Eva. Your dad's on my side, and soon, everyone else will be too." Linda finally spoke up, her voice quivering but strong. "Eva's not alone. I'm with her. And we won't let you destroy this family." Rachel turned to Linda, her expression one of mock pity. Still playing the devoted wife? Wake up, Linda. Richard doesn't want you anymore. You're just a sad, leftover relic of his past. I stepped between them, anger boiling over. Enough, Rachel. You've said your piece, now get out. We don't need your venom here. Rachel smirked, undeterred. Just remember, I always get what I want. And right now, I want you and your precious Linda out of the way. With that, she turned and left, her laughter echoing in the hallway. I closed the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Her threat hung in the air like a dark cloud. This was more than a family dispute, it was a battle for our future, our dignity. Linda and I sat back down, the weight of Rachel's words settling over us. We can't let her win, Eva, Linda said, her voice resolute. I nodded, my resolve hardening. We won't. We'll fight back, and we'll protect what's ours. She's not going to get away with this. The morning sun did little to lighten the mood as Linda and I began the daunting task of packing her belongings. Each item we wrapped seemed to hold a memory, a piece of a life that was being unceremoniously dismantled. As I folded some of Linda's clothes, I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Can you believe this? Years of memories, just stuffed into boxes like they're nothing. Linda, holding a photo frame, sighed deeply. It's hard, Eva. This was my life, our life. And now, it's just fading away. The sound of footsteps alerted us to Rachel's arrival. She leaned against the doorway, a smug smile on her face.
Aw,
Packing up already? How efficient. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. I glared at her, my hands balling into fists. You're loving this, aren't you? Kicking a woman out of her home? Rachel shrugged, her eyes cold. It's not personal, Eva. It's just how the game is played. And I always play to win. Linda placed the frame in the box, her voice trembling. This was my home, Rachel. How can you be so cruel? Rachel's laugh was harsh. Cruel? Please. I'm just taking what's mine. Besides, it's time for some fresh air around here. Out with the old, in with the new, right? I stepped forward, anger surging through me. This isn't a game, Rachel. You're destroying people's lives. Rachel's gaze was unflinching. Life's tough, honey. Better learn to deal with it. And honestly, it's better for everyone if you and Linda just disappear. Make things easier for your dad and me. I moved closer to her, my voice low and fierce. You may think you've won, but this isn't over. We won't just disappear and let you destroy everything we care about. Rachel smirked, unfazed. Big words, Eva, but that's all they are. Words. Face it, you've lost. Now, hurry up with the packing. I have plans for this room. With that, she turned and left, her laughter echoing behind her. Together, we continued packing, each item a symbol of the past but also a motivation for the fight ahead. Rachel might think she's won, but I wasn't going to let her have the last laugh. After the grueling task of packing, Linda and I found solace at my grandmother Margaret's house, the mother of my dead mom. It was a quaint, modest home, filled with the warmth that was starkly missing from my father's mansion. As we settled in, my grandmother, a spry and sharp-witted woman in her 70s, poured us some tea. Eva, Linda, tell me everything, she said, her eyes sharp with concern. I recounted the events, my words laced with anger and frustration. As I spoke, Grandma Margaret's expression turned from concern to a steely resolve. Richard has lost his mind, I concluded, slamming my cup on the table a little harder than I intended. Grandma Margaret nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. That man has always been a fool, but this is a new low. Linda, her voice weary, added, I just can't believe he'd do this to us, Margaret. Grandma Margaret reached across the table, patting Linda's hand. Now, we're not going to let this Rachel person win. I've got a plan. I leaned in, curious. A plan? What are you thinking, Grandma? She smiled, a glint of mischief in her eyes. Well, it's high time Richard learned a lesson. He forgets who actually owns that big house of his. Linda and I exchanged a confused glance. What do you mean, owns the house? I asked. Grandma Margaret chuckled. Oh, my dear, that house, along with a significant portion of the family business, is in my name. Richard was just managing it for me. But now, I think it's time for a change. I sat up straighter, realization dawning on me. You mean, you can kick him out? Exactly, she said, her smile widening. And that's not all. I've been thinking it's time for the younger generation to take over the business. Eva, how would you feel about running the family company? I was taken aback. Me? Run the company? Linda squeezed my hand. Eva, you can do this. You're smart, capable. You just graduated top of your class in economics. Grandma Margaret nodded. It's settled then. We'll call a family meeting this weekend. Richard and his little girlfriend won't know what hit them. As we began to plan, I felt a sense of purpose ignite within me. Grandma Margaret's plan was bold, but it was just what we needed. It was time to take a stand, to reclaim our dignity and our family's legacy. This weekend, Richard and Rachel would learn they had messed with the wrong family. The atmosphere at Grandma Margaret's house was electric with unspoken tensions as we gathered for the family dinner. Father and Rachel, smirking with false confidence, were seated across from me, Linda, and Grandma. The modest setting of Grandma's dining room was a stark contrast to the lavishness they were accustomed to. Grandma Margaret, with a composed and steely demeanor, initiated the conversation. Thank you all for coming. Tonight, I need to discuss some crucial changes concerning our family and its business affairs. Father, always eager to assert his authority, interjected confidently, of course, Margaret. What strategic shifts are you contemplating? Without missing a beat, Grandma's voice cut through the air, clear and authoritative. To begin with, Richard, it seems you've neglected to remember the legal ownership of your current residence. It's under my name. Confusion and disbelief shadowed Father's face. What are you insinuating, Margaret? Grandma leaned forward, her eyes piercing. Simply put, I am utterly appalled by your treatment of Linda and your current escapades. Hence, I am revoking your privilege to reside in that house. Father's voice was a mix of disbelief and desperation. You can't do that, Margaret. That's my home. It was never truly yours, Grandma retorted sharply. Furthermore, I am removing you from your position at the helm of our family business. The room seemed to spin for Richard. Rachel, her earlier smugness evaporating, looked utterly aghast. And who, pray tell, will assume this monumental responsibility? Father managed to choke out. Grandma's gaze shifted to me, her expression softening. Eva will take over. She's demonstrated the acumen and integrity necessary for such a role. A surge of pride and determination rushed through me. Rachel scoffed, her voice laced with venom. This is ludicrous. Eva? She's incapable of managing a business of such magnitude. I faced her squarely, my resolve unshaking. Your underestimation of me is your folly, Rachel. I am far removed from the intimidated schoolgirl you once knew. Father, flustered and scrambling, protested, Margaret, this is absurd. Eva's just a young woman. Yet she possesses a wisdom and maturity that you evidently lack, Grandma countered firmly. Rachel, standing abruptly, her chair clattering behind her, sneered. This is preposterous. Richard, we're leaving. They can't possibly enforce this farce. Father looked helplessly torn between his mother-in-law and the defiant Rachel. Margaret, reconsider, please. Grandma stood up, her decision irrevocable. My decision stands. Eva, you have my unwavering support. Richard, make alternative living arrangements. As they left, Rachel spat out venomously, "You're a foolish old woman, living in the past." Father, now isolated and defeated, followed her out. Rachel paused at the door, realization dawning upon her. "You're nothing without your mother's money, Richard." "I won't waste my time on a penniless man," she declared, before storming out, leaving father behind. "I watched the one who bullied me at school and felt satisfied. She got her way, and I will make sure that this story becomes known to all my friends." The morning at Grandma Margaret's had a different feel, charged with the energy of change. Linda and I, over coffee in the kitchen, were discussing the future. "Eva, we're at a crossroads," Linda said, her voice steady despite the shadows of recent events. "It's all changing, isn't it?" I nodded, feeling the mantle of responsibility settle on my shoulders. "It sure is. Running the company, it's a big deal. But I'm up for it. We need to set things right." Grandma came in, her presence always bringing clarity. "Morning, ladies. Ready to turn the page and start this new chapter?" I smiled, despite the nerves. "Ready as I'll ever be. We've got a lot to sort out." Our planning was cut short by a knock. There stood father, his usual confidence gone, replaced by a look of desperation. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice betraying his anxiety. I hesitated but let him in. The atmosphere tensed as he sat down. "I'm sorry," he began, his eyes not quite meeting ours. "I messed up. I see that now." Linda's response was calm but icy. "Sorry doesn't quite cover it, Richard. You've hurt us deeply." I faced him squarely. "You let us down, Dad. Chose her over your own family. That's not something you can just apologize away." He looked down, accepting the truth in my words. "I've lost everything. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I just want to make things right." Grandma's voice was firm. "Apologies are a start, but what matters now is how you move forward." I took a deep breath, knowing what needed to be said. "Forgiveness, that's going to take time. A lot of time. The company is in my hands now, and things are going to change." Richard's face showed a flicker of hope, but I stood firm. "This doesn't mean things go back to how they were. Linda's filing for divorce. And for me, well, I can't just let you back into my life. Not now, maybe not for a long time." Richard nodded, a man defeated by his own choices, and left quietly. Turning back to Linda and Grandma, I felt a surge of determination. We've got work to do. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to make things right. For us, for the company. Linda smiled, a mix of sadness and resolve in her eyes. "I'm with you, Eva. It's time for new beginnings." Grandma nodded in agreement. "You're both strong women. We'll get through this, make a better future. It's time to show what we're made of." As we sat down to plan our next steps, I felt the strength of our united front. We were entering uncharted territory, but together, we were unstoppable. This was more than a fresh start for the business, it was a new beginning for our family, built on our terms, our strength, and our resolve.
I'm sitting at our small, cluttered kitchen table, stirring my tea absent-mindedly. It's been a rough day, or maybe it's just the pregnancy hormones making everything feel more intense. My name is Nora. I'm 32, working as a sports manager for a top American football team, and now, expecting. You'd think that'd be enough excitement for one lifetime, but no, there's always family drama to spice things up. Across from me is my husband, Mark. He's the kind of guy who you know you can always count on. Kind, understanding, And, let's be honest, easy on the eyes too. He's been my rock through everything, especially now, with the baby on the way. Nora, you okay? Mark asks, his brow furrowed with concern. His voice always has a way of sounding like a warm hug. Yeah, just thinking, I reply, trying to smile. Mark reaches across the table, taking my hand in his. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together, okay? I nod, feeling a little better. But the thought of facing his family again makes my stomach twist. They've never been my biggest fans. Mark's mom, Mrs. Thompson, is the type who smiles to your face but whispers behind your back. And then there's his sister, Laura. She's 2 years older than me, married with 2 kids, and she's made it her personal mission to make my life miserable. It started off as small jabs here and there, but ever since we announced the pregnancy, she's been relentless. Just yesterday, at the family dinner, she started again. So, still hanging around those football players all day? Laura asked, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Mark jumped in before I could respond. Laura, cut it out. You know she's professional. Laura just laughed, a harsh, grating sound. I'm just saying, it's a lot of temptation, isn't it? All those fit, young guys? I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my cool. It's the same every time. She hints, insinuates things about me and my job, about my loyalty to Mark. It's exhausting. Mark's mom, sitting beside Laura, always chimes in with her own subtle digs. Well, we just want what's best for Mark, don't we? I remember looking at Mark, feeling a mix of gratitude and frustration. He's always there, standing up for me, but his family's words still sting. It's like they're waiting for me to slip up, to prove their point. Hey, Nora, Mark says, snapping me back to the present. You know none of what they say is true, right? I trust you, completely. I nod again, squeezing his hand. I know, it's just hard sometimes. Mark's face hardens slightly. I'll talk to them again. This needs to stop. I lean back in my chair, feeling the weight of the situation. Our little family is growing, and I can't help but wonder how this baby will change things. Will it bring us closer together, or drive a deeper wedge between us and his family? The day at work was long and tiring, typical for a Monday. My mind kept drifting to the family drama, making it hard to focus on the reports piling up on my desk. I let out a long sigh as I finally pushed back my chair, ready to head home. As I walked through the parking lot, I noticed my car had a flat tire. Great, just what I needed, I muttered to myself. Nora, need some help? It was Jake, one of the coaches. He's a giant of a man, always ready to lend a hand. I shook my head. No, I'll just call a tow truck. Thanks, though. Jake raised an eyebrow. That'll take ages. Let me give you a ride. It's no trouble. I hesitated, thinking about Laura's snide remarks. But it was getting late, and I really just wanted to get home. Okay, sure, thanks, Jake. The ride was quiet, mostly. Jake asked about the baby, and I found myself talking about the nursery we were setting up. He dropped me off with a friendly wave, and that was that. Or so I thought. The next day, things took a turn. I was in the kitchen, pouring myself some tea, when Mark walked in, his face like a thundercloud. We need to talk, he said, his voice tight. I felt my stomach drop. What's wrong? He held up his phone, showing me a video. It was me, getting into Jake's car. The angle was creepy, like someone was spying. My sister sent me this, Mark said, his jaw clenched. She's saying stuff about you and Jake. I felt a flash of anger. Are you kidding me? He just gave me a ride because of a flat tire. Mark ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I know, I believe you, but she's stirring things up, telling me to open my eyes and nonsense like that. I slammed my cup down, tea splashing over the rim. This is ridiculous. She's been after me since day one, and now this? Mark came over, putting his arms around me. I know. She's out of line. I'll handle it. I leaned into his embrace, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. Why can't she just leave us alone? Mark sighed. I wish I knew, but I'm on your side, always. I nodded, trying to calm down. Thanks. I hate that she's doing this. We stood there for a moment, in the quiet of our kitchen, united against an unseen enemy. It was comforting, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the start of something bigger, something uglier. I pulled back, looking up at Mark. We can't let her get to us. This is our family, our life. She's not going to ruin it. Mark nodded, determination in his eyes. Absolutely, we're in this together. The days following the video incident felt like walking on eggshells. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart skipped a beat, half expecting another twisted message from Laura. It was like living under a microscope, with every move I made potentially being watched and judged. One evening, Mark and I were sitting in the living room, each lost in our own thoughts, when my phone pinged with a message. I glanced at it, and my heart sank. Another text from Laura, no doubt. Anything important? Mark asked, noticing my expression. Just a reminder about the team's meeting tomorrow, I lied, not wanting to stir up more drama. I couldn't tell him that Laura had sent a snarky message about being careful around the players. Mark nodded, but I could tell he was still tense. You know, maybe you should talk to your boss about Laura's behavior. It's getting out of hand. I shook my head. And say what? That my sister-in-law is spreading rumors? That'll sound great. Mark frowned. Well, something needs to be done. This can't go on. I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. I know, but what can we do? It's her word against mine. There was a silence, filled with unspoken worries and frustrations. Then, Mark stood up abruptly. I'm going for a walk, need to clear my head. I watched him go, feeling a mix of guilt and helplessness. This whole situation was putting a strain on us, and I hated it. The next day at work, I tried to focus, but Laura's words echoed in my mind, making it hard to concentrate. During lunch, I sat alone, picking at my food, when my colleague, Lisa, sat down next to me. Nora, you've been quiet lately. Everything okay? Lisa asked, her brow furrowed in concern. I forced a smile. Yeah, just a lot on my mind. Lisa leaned in, her voice low. Is it about that video? I heard rumors. I felt a surge of anger and embarrassment. Who's spreading this nonsense? Lisa shrugged. I don't know, but it's around. You know how people talk. I put my fork down, my appetite gone. Great, just what I needed. Lisa put a reassuring hand on mine. Hey, we know you. Don't let idle gossip get to you. I nodded, but her words did little to ease my mind. The rumors, Laura's relentless jabs, it was all starting to take a toll on me. When I got home that day, Mark was already there, looking serious. "We need to talk about Laura." I hung up my coat, bracing myself. "What now?" Mark hesitated. "I think we should confront her, together. Show her we're united." I sighed, feeling a knot in my stomach. "And then what? She's not going to stop, Mark. This is like a game to her." Mark's jaw tightened. "Well, we can't just let her walk all over us. We have to stand up to her." I nodded, knowing he was right, but dreading the confrontation. Facing Laura meant opening ourselves up to more attacks, more scrutiny. But maybe Mark was right. Maybe standing up to her was the only way to end this. "Okay," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Let's do it. Let's confront her." Mark reached out, taking my hand. "We're in this together, remember?" I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his support. "Together," I echoed, knowing that whatever lay ahead, we'd face it side by side. The day of our son's celebration was a mix of joy and underlying tension. The house was filled with the laughter of friends and the coos of family members over our little bundle of joy. I tried to soak in the happiness, but part of me was on edge, waiting for the inevitable drama to unfold. As guests arrived with gifts and warm wishes, I noticed Laura walking in, a smirk playing on her lips. She held a small, neatly wrapped package, her eyes locked on mine. I felt Mark tense up beside me. "Let's just get through this," I whispered to him, squeezing his hand. He nodded, giving me a reassuring smile. "We've got this." The party went smoothly for a while, everyone cooing over the baby and enjoying the spread of food. Then came the time for opening gifts. My heart pounded as Laura stepped forward, her gift in hand. "Here's something special from me," she said, handing me the package with a flourish. I unwrapped it, my hands shaking slightly. Inside was a certificate for a DNA paternity test from a well-known clinic. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Mark's face turned red with anger. "What the hell, Laura?" Laura shrugged, her smirk widening. "Just a little family joke, if you've got nothing to hide." I felt a surge of anger and humiliation. Standing up, I faced her, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "This isn't a joke. It's an insult." The guests shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between us. Mark stood up, his voice firm. "You need to leave, now." Laura laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the room. "Oh, come on, Nora. Can't you take a joke?" I held the certificate up, my decision made. "Fine, we'll take your joke. We'll do the test, and then everyone will see how wrong you are." There were murmurs of surprise and approval from some of the guests. Laura's smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "Suit yourself," she said, turning on her heel and walking out. The rest of the party passed in a blur. Friends and family tried to be supportive, but the joy of the occasion had been tainted. Later, as Mark and I put the baby to bed, he wrapped his arms around me. "I'm sorry, Nora. I never thought she'd go this far." I leaned back against him, feeling drained. "It's not your fault, but we'll get through this. Together." Mark kissed the top of my head. "Always." The next day, we went to the clinic. The whole process felt surreal, like we were characters in some twisted drama. But we did it, for our family, for our peace of mind. sitting at the kitchen table with the DNA test results in hand, confirming Mark as the father, a mix of relief and anger coursed through me. Mark, looking over my shoulder, let out a long, heavy sigh. "Well, that settles it," he said, his voice tinged with a mix of satisfaction and bitterness. I nodded, folding the paper and setting it aside. "It does. But it doesn't change what she did. How she made us feel." Mark sat down beside me, his expression hardening. "We can't let her get away with this. She's crossed a line." I looked at him, my mind racing with thoughts. "I have an idea. It's a bit, well, it's not exactly nice." Mark raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." I took a deep breath. "Her birthday is coming up. What if we give her a taste of her own medicine? A DNA test for her family?" Mark's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," I replied, feeling a surge of determination. "She needs to understand how it feels." Mark considered it for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, if that's what you think is best. But are you prepared for the fallout?" I shrugged. "After everything she's done?" "Yes, I am." The next few weeks passed in a blur of planning and anticipation. Mark was supportive, though I could tell he was worried about how far this might go. But I was resolute. Laura had to learn her lesson. Finally, Laura's birthday arrived. We were at her house, a crowd of family and friends gathered to celebrate. I could feel the weight of the gift in my purse, a small box wrapped in bright paper. As we all gathered around for the gift giving, my heart pounded in my chest. Laura opened gifts from others, laughing and thanking them. Then it was our turn. I handed her the gift. "Happy birthday, Laura." She tore open the paper, her smile faltering as she saw what was inside. A DNA test kit, just like the one she had given us. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look of shock and anger. "What is this? Some kind of joke, Nora?" "No joke," I said, my voice firm. "Just returning the favor." The room fell silent, everyone looking at us. Laura's face turned red, then white. "This is sick," she hissed. "You're sick." I met her gaze, unflinching. "Now you know how it feels." Mark put a hand on my shoulder, a silent show of support. Laura looked around, her expression one of betrayal and humiliation. "This isn't over," she spat, before storming off. As we left the party, Mark squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" I nodded, feeling a strange mix of triumph and unease. "I'm fine. It's just, I never thought I'd be capable of something like this." Mark pulled me into a hug. "She pushed us to this. Remember that." The aftermath of Laura's birthday party felt like the calm before a storm. Mark and I were at home, bracing ourselves for what was to come. "You think she'll actually do the test?" Mark asked, his voice laced with concern. I shrugged, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "I don't know, but I hope she realizes how her actions hurt others." It wasn't long before we got our answer. A few days later, Mark's phone buzzed with a message. He read it, his expression turning grim. "Laura did the test," he said, handing me the phone. The message was short and to the point, with a picture of the DNA test results attached. My heart skipped a beat as I looked at the results. They revealed that her husband was not the biological father of her children. Mark and I exchanged a look, a mix of shock and disbelief in our eyes. "This is I didn't expect this, he stammered. I felt a knot in my stomach. Neither did I. The air in our living room was thick with tension, the kind you could cut with a knife. Laura stormed in, her face twisted in fury, with Mrs. Thompson, Mark's mom, in tow. Their unexpected arrival was like a storm breaking the uneasy calm that had settled in our house. What the hell do you think you were doing with that DNA test? Laura spat, her eyes blazing with anger. I stood my ground, feeling a surge of defiance. Exposing the truth, apparently. Something you should have thought about before spreading lies about me. Mrs. Thompson chimed in, her voice sharp. You've gone too far. This family doesn't need your kind of drama. I narrowed my eyes, my patience wearing thin. My kind of drama? Laura's been making my life hell since the day I married Mark. I just gave her a taste of her own medicine. Laura's face turned a shade redder. You're a homewrecker, Nora, that's what you are. Before I could retort, the front door swung open, and in walked Tom, Laura's husband. He looked like a man on the edge, his eyes darting between us. I can't believe you two. And my wife, my kids. His voice broke. I locked eyes with Laura, who was now visibly shaking. You want to tell him, or should I? Laura stammered, but no words came out. I turned to the TV and played the ace up my sleeve, a video from the stadium security. It showed Laura, clear as day, kissing an unknown man in the stands. Tom's face drained of color as he watched. That's my best friend, he whispered, disbelief etched on his face. Laura started to sob, her facade crumbling. Tom, it's not what it looks like. But Tom wasn't listening. He turned to me, his expression a mix of gratitude and pain. Thank you. I needed to see this. I shrugged, feeling a cold satisfaction. Don't thank me, thank Laura for her endless meddling. Mrs. Thompson stood there, speechless, her earlier reproach forgotten. The room was silent except for Laura's crying. Tom turned and walked out, his steps heavy with the weight of betrayal. Laura ran after him, her pleas falling on deaf ears. Mrs. Thompson followed them out in silence. As the door closed behind them, Mark wrapped his arms around me. You okay? I leaned into his embrace, feeling a complex mix of relief and regret. Yeah, it's finally over. The dust had settled in the wake of the scandal, leaving a silence that was both uneasy and reflective. Mark and I sat on our back porch, the evening air cool and comforting. Our son slept peacefully inside, oblivious to the turmoil that had recently engulfed our lives. Mark broke the silence, his voice tinged with a mix of sadness and resolve. I can't believe it's come to this. My sister, Tom's best friend, my family, all torn apart. I looked out into the fading light, feeling a weight in my chest. I know. Sometimes the truth hurts, Mark. It's not pretty, but it's necessary. Your sister's actions, her lies, they were like a poison in our family. Mark nodded slowly. I know. It's just hard to see it all fall apart. I reached out, taking his hand. We can rebuild, Mark. Not the same as before, maybe, but something stronger, something real. He squeezed my hand, a small smile breaking through his troubled expression. With you, I believe we can. We've weathered the storm together. We sat in silence for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. Then Mark spoke up, his voice more determined. We need to start fresh, you, me, our son. We'll set new boundaries with my family. It's time to put our little family first. I nodded, feeling a sense of purpose amidst the chaos. I agree. It's time to move forward on our terms. As we stood up to go inside, Mark paused, looking at me with a newfound appreciation. You know, through all of this, you've been my rock. I can't thank you enough for standing by me. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. Always, Mark. We're a team, remember? We walked back into the house, the light spilling out onto the porch, a beacon in the darkness. Inside, our son slept peacefully, a reminder of the love and hope that still remained. I closed my eyes, feeling Mark's steady breathing beside me. Tomorrow was a new day, a new beginning. And we were ready for it.